Tutorials are often the first things the player sees in a game. It is the foundation that everything else is built from. In the article titled Learning to Play, Understanding In-Game Tutorials with a Pilot Study on Implicit Tutorials, Chow and Liu state that the term tutorial often refers to the strategies adopted by game designers to communicate the expected gameplay to the players. The controls, mechanics, and the rules of the game are established to the player. However, not all games have sufficient tutorials. Some games purposefully don't teach you, and the lack of proper tutorial becomes a part of the art itself. Noita is a physics-based roguelike created by Finnish indie developers Nola Games, where you play as a witch and grow stronger by crafting wands and getting perks as you go. The wand crafting system is incredibly complex, so according to Chow and Liu, the tutorial should be all the more important. However, the tutorial is almost non-existent. You are taught how to move, shoot, kick, and a few other basic controls, and then are thrown into the world. Despite failing the key points the researchers have made about good tutorials, Noita is a very well-received game with a large and active fanbase, especially considering it's made by indie developers with only a few games under their belt. It should be noted that tutorials are not just the intro teachings. There are also just-in-time tutorials where you're given the advice at the last possible moment, and also implicit tutorials where carefully constructed scenarios teach you rather than text on screen. Noita lacks any just-in-time tutorials, with only extra information being tips about spells or effects that are often vague. However, these small bits of information are largely insufficient for learning the rules that this game expects you to play by. As far as implicit tutorials, the fact that the world is pseudo-random means only a few things can be implicitly taught to the player. At the beginning, you walk into the cave, fight your way down to the portal with no way back, collecting items and gold as you go, and then are given access to a safe zone, the Holy Mountain. Here, you can stock up on water, buy items, customize your wands, and then pick a perk. Once done, you leave the mountain as it crumbles behind you, and carry on to the next portal. After clearing all the areas, you reach the boss and get a chance to win the game. The set of rules is as close as Noita gets to an implicit tutorial. You are given a pattern, and you form rules based on this. However, none of these tutorials actually help the player get stronger, which will become quite evident as the player progresses through the levels. So how does the player actually get strong enough to win? Let's take a step back for a second and look at the wand crafting. There are two components to the system, the wand itself and the spells it casts. Wands have varying stats, like cast speed and mana recharge, and spells have different effects and fall into different categories, like modifying material, static, or projectile spells. Noita, of course, teaches you nothing about how this works, aside from some basic in-game description of spells. Yet, even these descriptions seem to be out to get you. The Giga Disc projectile is described as having a curious flight pattern, which is the game's way of saying it is going to come directly back at you, and likely kill you. By all accounts, Noita's tutorials, if you can even call them that, fail to teach you anything about wand crafting. So how do you learn? The only ways you can. Either experiment, or turn to someone who knows what they're doing. Wand crafting is a highly unique gameplay mechanic. Even the slightest change in order can be the difference between a godly wand and a wet noodle. There is little to no explanation of what to do and what works well, and this is because the developers want you to experiment. Through experimentation, the player will have to inch their way through progress, experiencing many horrendous accidents along the way. Despite the setbacks, you might actually come across something that works, something that you made. Taking into consideration the randomness of each playthrough, and the sheer depth of this mechanic, I feel confident saying that a good few of the wands and spell combos I've used have never been seen by other players. Now taking into consideration how many people have and still do play this game, there have been millions of unique wands created, allowing players to create their own unique wand, adding a bit of themselves into the game. A wand that came about through their own trials and tribulations, a unique story that the player went through, a story that would have been limited by a wand building tutorial. However, pure experimentation might not be enough. After dying many times with few results, you might turn to those with knowledge. Whether it is someone you know or on game forums, getting some help from the community can help you get a better understanding and still leave lots of room to experiment with. Although you could argue getting help like this is not any different from a tutorial, I would disagree. Chow and Liu claim that tutorials give a sense of agency to the player and help create immersion for the player, which I believe to be true for some cases, but not universally. Remember, you are playing as a witch trying to create a magical weapon. In mythology, the world does not teach witches how to use magic. They have to either experiment for themselves or learn from those more studied than they are. The developers wanted you to experience this, wanted you to experiment with your own spells and consult those with knowledge. The world remains just as mysterious as it always was, but now you can navigate through that mystery just a bit easier. In this way, getting help from the community actually makes the game more immersive than it would be with additional text teaching you. Now, I have this alright wand here, and I heard that electric arc can be good for damage, and apparently the chainsaw can speed things up. But what could a chainsaw 2 possibly do to make it— Oh, I see now. Okay, well, now that I have a strong wand, it's time to kill the boss, right? You see, Noita is a game about breaking rules. All the rules I mentioned before were, well, lies. Once you go through the portal, you can go back. You can get out of the Holy Mountain without it crumbling behind you. You don't have to fight the bosses, and you don't have to go through the cave at the start. Everything that the game teaches you is a lie, and any rule that you discovered was meant to be broken. Tutorials are the way to inform you of the rules of the world you are playing in. They give you a foundation, something to grasp onto and orientate yourself with in the world. But what if that world doesn't have rules? If any rules that do exist in it are meant to be broken? Well, what would a tutorial be for? If Noita gave you a tutorial for wands, it would be taken away from the wonder of experimentation, the spark from creativity, and a driving force from the community. If you were given tips on how to survive and where to go, the game would have to either reveal all of its secrets to you, or would have to lie to you. And that's just the thing. The game never lies to you. It doesn't tell you to walk into the cave. It doesn't tell you that you can't go back. All the rules of the world were the ones you, or the people you learned from, created. In Noita, you're only given the basic controls, since that's all the game could tell you, without lying or losing its identity. In the end, it is just as Chow and Liu described. Tutorials are the way the developers communicate to you the expected gameplay. In Noita, the developers choose to let you learn for yourself. In Noita, you are a witch, and the world is full of mystery.